Good. That's showing recording and it's showing 4 o'clock. Okay, afternoon ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Planning Committee. May I remind everybody present that the meeting will be live streamed as well as recorded via the internet, and this recording archived for future viewing. Could all participants please mute themselves when not speaking in order to avoid any background noise or feedback when other participants are speaking. If a participant wishes to speak, can they please put their hand up if they can be seen, or use the raise hand or chat functions. Please ensure that all debate is raised verbally and not via the chat function for the sake of the recording. The chat function may be used to highlight any technical issues and or to grab the attention of the chairman or Democratic Services officer. If any participant has difficulty hearing or being heard when they are addressing the committee, then they should let the chairman or Democratic Service officer know. If they have a webcam, they could try turning this off, as this may help with their broadband or Wi-Fi bandwidth, so at least they can be heard and hear clearly. Welcome to the public who are watching. We don't have any public speakers, and I'll move straight on to our first agenda item, which is apologies for absence. I personally haven't had any. I don't know, Amy, have we had any through?
Nothing to myself, Chair. I believe we're just missing Councillor Williams and Councillor Wright from the committee today.
Okay, right. So we'll see if we get apologies in from them then. Are you all happy that I signed the minutes of the meeting of the 2nd as a correct record? Yeah.
Happy.
Move we note, Chair.
Thank you very much.
Happy.
Okay, agenda 3 is to receive any declarations of interest. Do we have any? Don't see any hands coming up, and I don't hear anybody or see anybody waving, so I assume not. Agenda 4 is building regulation applications. Are you happy that we note these?
Move we note the delegated list, Chair.
Thank you. Again, agenda 5 for noting planning applications under delegation.
Yeah, move we note, yes.
Thank you. Agenda 6 is appeals. I think Ian's just going to have a quick run through, but it's looking pretty healthy at the moment. So hand over to Ian for a minute.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, there's just one appeal decision on the list, which was relating to the refusal of consent to remove trees adjacent to the highway between Lantwit Major and Cowbridge, and the inspector agreed with us that the trees contributed to sort of a pleasant, sort of verdant character along that part of the road between Lantwit and Cowbridge, and that the justification for removing them was not adequate. I mean, there was the main reason cited was that, you know, it's a danger to kind of highway safety and vehicles clipping the trees and things like that. So we spoke to our highways colleagues, and they advised that as far as they were concerned, there was adequate clearance, that they weren't posing a danger to highway safety. So the inspector agreed and dismissed the appeal.
You're just on mute there, Chair. I'd move we note appeals unless you had any other points.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, and the stats are looking good as well for us, so that's good. Agenda 7 is the trees, a delegated list. Happy we note?
Yeah, move we note, Chair.
Thank you.
Happy.
So on to the order of business of today is the planning applications, and the first one on the list. Those of you eagle-eyed who might have spotted, we've seen this before come into committee. It's 2021 01665 full Porthkerry House, Porthkerry. Ian, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll share my screen if I may, so that we can see the plans. Yeah, so as you say, this application or this development has been before Planning Committee previously, at which time the committee resolved to refuse the application and authorise enforcement action due to the impact of a raised terrace around a protected home oak tree. Since that time, the applicant has had the opportunity to submit any more information to us that might have had bearing on that situation. And subsequently, we've had this application in which seeks to provide a further justification for allowing the retention of the development. Essentially, it's scarcely different. The submissions effectively say there will have been some damage to the tree already, so kind of there's no point in taking the terrace away because the tree's already been damaged. Members may remember, if you look at these photos, you can see the tree's been treated quite crudely with the terrace and the foundations around it. What the amended report says is effectively there will have been some damage to the tree already, and that is unlikely to be kind of reversed. And it proposes some fairly minor works around kind of the base and the roots, which the report suggests could prevent further decline or decay. So as members will have noted from the report, our opinion is that if there's a chance of preventing further decline or decay, then the most appropriate thing to do would be to take away the work that would be causing the harm, and give the tree the best chance. It doesn't appear to be the applicant's case that the tree has zero chance and is already in terminal decline. So if they're proposing more modest works in order to prevent further decline, we would argue that, well, actually, the more substantial removal of the terrace is what's needed to prevent the further decline and protection of the tree. So effectively, we're recommending the same: the refusal of the application and the confirmation of the authorisation of the enforcement action. Following which, if that's granted, we would look to take action ASAP.
Lovely, thank you, Ian. Okay, open for debate. Would anybody? Yes, Councillor Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for the report. It sort of supports my reading of it. I mean, ancient woodland and veteran trees are not just important, but are also significant in themselves, but also significant for the general environment and well-being in the county. And they provide significant habitat and support for a vast number of flora and fauna, and should not be treated lightly and should not be treated cavalierly. The defence that the applicants are putting is that, you know, the tree's probably terminally affected anyway, and we should let it go. It is indefensible. It misses the general principle that developers should not be able to materially benefit from ignoring orders or planning rules. And I support officers' recommendations, and so move. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil. Did I see? Yes, Councillor Gray had his hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm happy to second officers' recommendations. Obviously disappointed we couldn't have already moved forward with enforcement action, but I think it's positive if they've been able to come back with suggestions and we're able now to reaffirm the need for enforcement. So hopefully this can be expedited swiftly following the committee's actions if people are going to vote with us.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Gray. Councillor Parker.
Yeah, well, I was going to second as well, but quite clearly, when you look at the photographs, the amount of rainwater that can actually get through to the roots by virtue of the fact it's all been covered undoubtedly is doing considerable harm now, and the faster we move the better, because the leaves are just about to come out and it needs all the moisture it can get. So happy to support as well.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. Anybody else want to say anything? Other than that, I will take it to a vote. I don't see any other hands coming up, so I will say to you, if you're in favour of officer's recommendation, bearing in mind it's asking for permission for enforcement action as well, please, if you're not happy with that, make it known now. Andrew, your hand is still up. I take it that's up from previously. Yeah, that's it. Okay, so that one goes through then. Officer's recommendations, refuse and enforce. Next one on the agenda, Dragon Clay Sports, Wick Road, Iweni. It's 2021-00217 full. Ian, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll share my screen again.
Yeah.
Okay, so this planning application, I'll just give a bit of background first, follows on from a previous application at the club a couple of years ago, where the shooting club proposed to extend the area of the club, and that was refused because we weren't happy that the noise modelling showed that the amenity of residents around the site would be protected, and they appealed that decision, and the inspector dismissed that appeal and agreed that there was likely to be harm to residential amenity, and there was also an ecological reason for refusal because of some of the impacts associated with extending into the additional land. On this plan here just shows members the location of the club in case you're not familiar. So it's just south of Corntown and Iweni. This application doesn't seek to extend the area of the shooting range. What it proposes is lowering its engineering operations to lower the ground level of the shooting area here, and using the material to raise the bund around the shooting range. Given the location and the nature of kind of heavy tree cover and vegetation around it, the bund is unlikely to have much of a visual impact in the wider context. The noise modelling shows that the increased bund and lowered ground level should improve the situation for existing residents in terms of the likely noise levels, and that's detailed in a table in the report. Effectively, at the moment, the shooting club have a restriction on them in terms of noise. So there's a condition that says that the noise shouldn't exceed 50 decibels at the kind of nearest sensitive property, but there's no restriction on hours of use. So alongside this, the applicants confirmed that they're happy to accept a condition which effectively regularises the hours. So in the report where there might be a reference to extension of hours, that is where on one evening per week, and on 4 competition days in the year, the club want to shoot beyond what they typically do on a weekly basis currently. But I think the key consideration here is that there are no hours restrictions on it. So in officers' opinion, restricting the hours and regularising them is a big positive compared to the existing situation, because it's unregularised at the moment, and the bund suggests that there would be lowered noise levels. There are a number of objections to it, and I think it's fair to say that activities with the shooting clubs in the general area do attract concern from residents, and it's not always an easy task to identify which club the noise is coming from. But I think the part of the reason that the club is happy to accept the regularisation of the hours is that I think that probably gives them a bit more comfort and confidence that they know that they're authorised within those hours. I think it's their contention that complaints received by our SRS section aren't in relation to them, and I can't comment definitively on that, but I think it's understandable in the context of a number of clubs and speculation about who's causing the noise. The club are quite keen to know that their operational hours are kind of being properly considered and authorised. Yeah, I think that's probably the basis of it, Chair.
Thank you very much, Ian. As you can see from the report, it was called in by the local member, Christine. She hasn't raised her hand, but I will offer her the chance to speak first if she wants. Christine, do you want to say a few words?
Thank you, Chair. Yes. First of all, I'd like to ask Ian a question. I know sometimes in planning legislation, once you've got something fixed, you can almost bend that fix, if you know what I mean. So in other words, you could possibly have maybe other events, but not exceed a particular amount. So I noticed that you're saying that, you know, obviously they want to regularise their hours because at the moment they're not. And they're somehow saying, oh, it's not us making the noise, you know, at other times it might be some other shoot or something. But I just wanted to clarify, if those hours are fixed, is there any bending of those fixed hours for any circumstance?
I mean, they wouldn't be entitled to bend them without applying to change it. No, what I couldn't say is that they could never apply or would never apply to ask to change those hours. If they did do that, they'd have to, you know, accompany the application with noise modelling, etc. However, even if the club did apply in the future to change those hours, I would still say that's still not a worse, sorry, that's double negative, but still a better position than currently when there is no control over the hours. So even if they did ask in the future, we'd consider it on its merits, and there's no guarantees we'd say yes. But even if they asked to, that's still not as bad as the current situation, I would say, when there's no control at all. But if they did apply to do that, we'd carry out consultations, including members, and committee could consider that as well if they wished. The other thing to remember here is that the bund is highly likely to decrease noise. And look at this development as a whole. It's the hours and it's the noise benefits of having the bund. And the conditions as a whole, we still propose to retain the condition which places that 50 decibel limit. So that would follow through. Then there's the hours, and there's a condition requiring them to tell us kind of how they intend to run the operation while they create the bund. So yes, in summary, they could apply to change it, but officers would be of the view that that's not prejudicial.
Yeah, and I notice you say that it's likely, but it's not certain that the bunds that are going to be put in place are going to reduce the noise. There is no certainty here, and I just wanted to raise a few points with members, particularly, I want to, you mentioned very briefly there the large number of objections to this application. And it's not surprising that there are a large number of objections, because without little exception, I can say that every meeting that I've attended over the last 5 years of the UNE Community Council, which has members from UNE and Corntown, that these concerns associated with this site have been raised by neighbours, members of the Community Council at every single meeting. Now, it's
can I just stop you a minute, Christine? I've got a bit of a idiosyncrasy here. Helen Baker has turned up on our screen and is not a member of Planning Committee. I know Helen, but unfortunately, I'm sorry, you're not allowed to be in this meeting. You can view it can view it online, but you can't be a part of the meeting. So could I ask Mrs. Baker to sign off, please?
I do think she's actually disconnected at the moment, Chair, but her image may have been stuck.
Okay, all right.
Because she's not showing as connected for myself. Hang on, it might be that she's... Yeah, for me at the moment, it's showing that she's not connected.
Okay, it's just still showing her face on my screen, but okay, yeah. Sorry, Christine.
Can I say, Chair, that I do know at the last Community Council meeting, a representative from UNE Council, of which Helen Baker is one, wanted to speak at the meeting. I'm not sure whether there's been an application to speak at the meeting. So, just to clarify.
Sorry, Christine, can I just, Helen, sorry, it's Jonathan, I'm chairing the meeting. You are not supposed to be coming in. I don't know who forwarded you the link, but this is for members of Planning Committee only. Could you sign out, please? Mrs. Baker. How on earth has she got the link? I mean, it's only councillors that get this.
Well, I can assure you, Chair, I haven't shared it.
No, can Amy? Is there any way you can force an exit?
I have removed Mrs. Baker several times, Chair. So I'll keep an eye on that for you.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, Christine. I know it's frustrating.
That's okay. That's okay. I think it's ironic that they were very concerned, the Community Council, at the last meeting, that they were given sufficient time to apply to speak at this meeting, and it's a shame that they, for some reason, their members aren't present today to make their views known. But as I've said,
they've had the same time as everybody else gets at every other meeting.
I'm sure they have. I think their chair is actually away following an operation. And you yourself, Chair, will know about that.
I managed to make it to the meeting.
Yeah, well, they obviously haven't. So just to reiterate, this has come up at every single Community Council meeting, bar a very few, over the last 5 years. So this site is very contentious within the vicinity of UNE, Corntown and the wider area. So it's difficult for us, isn't it, as a committee, to imagine what it's like to have the sound of intermittent gunfire. It is hard for us to imagine that. You know, I'm fortunate, like most people here, that I've never lived or experienced gunfire in my own home.
No, I know, I fully understand, and I know it is contentious. I know the clubs, there are a couple of clubs in Iweni, have been there for many, many, many years.
Yes, you probably shot at some of them yourself, or shot at. Yes, so I can see as a chair that you know a lot about gun clubs and the like. But I'd just like to say that it's not just human beings that suffer from gun clubs. You know, it's the animals associated with those homes, the cats, the dogs, the horses, and so on and so forth.
Christine,
you know, living near the site must be, you know, a hideous, most unpleasant thing by anybody's standards.
I do understand that, but it is a very, very long-term thing, and I'm not just talking 2 or 3 years, I'm talking 20, 30 years.
Yes, absolutely.
This is an improvement.
No, I don't see it as an improvement. I know the officers of the committee.
It certainly is, because the bun.
Could I speak?
Yes.
As the ward councillor, uninterrupted, please.
Yeah, but it does say in the report, yes, but I'm just explaining to you, you're saying facts that aren't true.
They are true. They are very true. No, I've never lived in my home and never experienced gunfire. That's all I've said.
I'll give you another couple of minutes and then we will move on to the next person.
I can hear, Chair, that maybe you don't want to hear what I've got to say here, and I'm very disappointed in that, because I think most ward councillors are given sufficient time to make their points, and I don't think you're giving me sufficient time here. In actual fact, I've now had about 4 interruptions. Yeah, so I'll just start again to remind members that we don't know what it's like to experience gunfire in our own homes. We do know that this site has been in operation for some time, unregulated. They have in the past suggested that they would put buns up all over the place to actually mitigate some of the noise. They have never done that. Now, recently, less than 18 months ago, in fact, November 2020, when this went to appeal, our officers and the inspectors at the time believed the existing application was not sufficient. In fact, the inspector said there would be real material harm to people living in the neighbouring residential properties and beyond from the noise. That was alongside the biodiversity issues. Now, I don't think that this application is very different. It doesn't ask to go into further areas, but it does ask for a car park and encroachment into the countryside. It does ask for change in the countryside. And actually, I don't think, as a committee, that we should be allowing any further use of this site. In actual fact, I know that we don't have the powers to take back the planning that's already been given here, but I think we should be asking in actually trying to force through a great restriction on the use of this site.
Okay, thank you, Christine. I can say from that, and you said it yourself, they have an existing permission, which gives them a lot more carte blanche to use it a lot more than is being proposed. But anyway, you've said your piece. Councillor Parker is the next person to have his hand up. Councillor Parker. Andrew. I'll come back to Andrew.
I think that's a legacy hand, actually. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I can see Ian wants to come back in anyway and answer a few. So and then I'll come to you, Neil. I see your hand is up.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Only just to come back on a couple of points and hopefully give a bit more comfort. Yeah, as you've mentioned, Chair, the site has planning permission, so that's authorised. We can't take that away from them. In the case of the last appeal, it didn't involve raising the buns like this. It didn't involve lowering the ground levels, and it did involve increasing the area of the range. That's 3 ways that the appeal proposal was different and likely to be more harmful than this. The reason I said likely to have an effect is because it's based on modelling, and I would never say bomb-proof anything, but everything that we know about how sound behaves says that if you've got a bigger barrier in the way, it's going to be better, and that's why the modelling shows that. Even if the buns had no effect whatsoever, this is still an improvement in terms of the hours. So I can't conceive any way that this is worse than the existing situation. That's my opinion, but I think that's backed up with some facts in the report.
Yeah, thank you, Ian. Right, I've got Neil Thomas, and then I see Andrew's hand is up. So Neil.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for that, Ian. Firstly, I'd like to preface my comments by saying I don't like guns, and I can't really understand why shit was popular. That being said, it's got nothing to do with planning matters. This site has been used for shooting for many, many decades, and though times and attitudes have changed, it's still well used. I would suppose that the majority of residents within earshot of this facility moved in full knowledge of what was on their doorsteps. It seems to me that increasing the height of the bunds, as Ian's just pointed out, along with the increased planting, which is talked about in the application, would serve to reduce the noise. We know that planting and so on is noise absorbent as well. One question I do have, though, is how the operators can ensure that any intruding wildlife will not be shot either accidentally or callously. It's alleged that previously conditioned bunds have not been built properly, and I would like to urge strong conditioning for that to be. I'd like to see that strongly conditioned in this case, in order to ensure that these heightened bunds, which, as Ian says, will be more absorbent and noise reducing, are in place before beneficial use. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil. Ian, do you want to come back on that, or shall I? Yeah, come back in on that one then, and then we'll go to Andrew.
Yeah. So we've got one condition that says that the bunds have to be constructed in accordance with these, the drawing reference numbers, and then another condition, because it's an existing use. I spoke to the agent and I asked them how would, if it's approved, how would they propose the club functions alongside the construction of the bunds? To which he said, well, that's something that they would need to consider further. So I'll put a condition on which says a schedule of timescales for the construction of the bunds, brackets, and how the shooting use would be operated during that period shall be submitted to and approved in writing. The shooting use shall not be operated outside the hours of 9 to 3:30 weekdays and 9 to 1:30 on Saturdays until that schedule's been approved. So what we're trying to say there is, until we know how and when you intend to do the bunds, don't operate beyond what you are doing at the moment. So it's no net detriment, and then it gives them a chance to consider how they would operate the club during the period when the bunds are being constructed. But yeah, those conditions I think are quite sort of secure in terms of making sure that they're constructed.
Okay,
thank you, Ian. Yeah, thank you.
Andrew Parker.
Yeah, I hope you can hear. My computer's playing up at the moment. I can't actually drop the hand down. So
clear, Andrew.
Yeah, okay. Now I've no comment actually. I'm just trying to escape from putting my hand up.
Okay, no problem.
Thanks.
I shall ignore you. If I do ignore you, then just wave at me or something.
Yeah.
I can see you on screen. Ben, Councillor Gray.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you to Christine for laying out the issues faced locally, and indeed, how residents experience it. Having read the report and looking at the planning considerations, though, I'd move officers' recommendations as laid out in the report with the conditions.
Thank you very much. I'm more than happy to second that. I don't see any more hands up, and I don't see anybody waving at me, so we're ready to go to a vote. So I'll do it as a roll call vote. I know we're not going to get a consensus on this one. Its officers' recommendations are for approval with the conditions as written. So I am voting for officers' recommendation myself, and I will ask Councillor Gray your vote, please.
For officers' recommendations.
Thank you. Councillor Aviott.
For the officers' recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Birch.
For officers' recommendations.
Thank you very much. Councillor Kay.
Against.
Thank you very much. Councillor Drake.
For officers' recommendations.
Thank you. Councillor Driscoll.
Against officers' recommendations.
Thank you very much. Councillor Edwards.
Abstain.
Okay. Thank you, Stuart. Councillor Hodges.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Johnson.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Kemp.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Parker.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Rowlands. No, Councillor Rowlands. No.
No, I'm here, Chair. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Couldn't find the button.
Your vote, Leighton.
Against, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Thomas.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Williams.
Still not with us, Chair.
Sorry, Chair, I can't
Oh, hello.
vote as I missed the first part of the
Uh,
discussion. So
okay. Yeah.
unfortunately, I
Okay.
can't
Thank you, Eddie. Councillor Wilson. Mark, you're on. Sorry, I missed that.
For.
Thank you. And we don't have Councillor Wright with us, do we? No. Okay, so that is carried. Thank you. That brings us to agenda item 8, of which I don't have any, and to the end of a very short planning committee, which I'm very grateful of. Although I look nice and comfortable in my chair, it's quite warm with a couple of cushions and a hot computer on your lap. Anyway, thank you all for bearing with us, and we'll see you all in a couple of weeks' time. Cheers all.
Well then, thank
Bye.
you, Chair.
Bye bye.
Thank you all.